Hi there. Today, my guest is Debbi Mack. Debbi and I met in a workshop for podcasters, and we were talking sustainability because I was talking about sustainability. And Debbi said, Actually, I used to work for the EPA. I used to be an attorney for the EPA. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so wild. But Debbi, thank you so much for being here and for your flexibility with me.
No problem. And thank you for having me on. Thank you.
And so Debbi is an author and a podcast host. And Debbi is a New York Times best-selling author, no less.
This was the book that did it.
I
Ta-da!
Crisis. Yeah. Uh,
Identity Crisis,
but so
my very first.
how many books now? How many books have you written?
Well, in the Sam McRae Mystery Series, I have 4 books. And I actually have a novelette that I have not published yet. Technically not well, technically I'm sharing it with people on Substack at the moment. And
Okay.
and I'm trying
Soon
to
to be
remember if I
published.
shared it with my newsletter readers. So many things. I have so many newsletters and things going these days, I get all confused.
So
So
many
anyway.
outlets, right? Oh my gosh. But so we are here to talk about digital minimalism and
Uh-huh.
sustainability for writers. But so you were just okay, so you said 4 books technically.
In the Sam McRae Mystery Series, plus I have 2 books in the Erica Jensen Mystery Series about a female Marine. Sam McRae, just so I'm clear, the Sam McRae Mystery Series is about a female lawyer who used to be a public defender and decided to open her own practice. And the series starts about 4 years after she left the public defender's office. And a client, she goes to her office that morning in the first chapter and sees that there are 2 cops there. One is from the FBI. One is a local homicide detective. And she finds out that her client, this client that she had in a domestic abuse situation, whose boyfriend had been hitting her or something, had had disappeared. This client had disappeared, and her boyfriend murdered. And so the police are obviously looking for her,
Right.
she's an obvious suspect. And but she's disappeared. And the FBI is involved, and Sam is kind of like wondering about this, and they keep asking about some gangster, and she's like, "What? What?" And then she finds out that her identity might have been stolen by her client. She thinks maybe she's just stuff she suspects based on things she finds out. So the kind of plot kind of goes from there.
Ooh, and
That's the first one.
Sam is the woman.
Sam is the woman. Her name, actually, her full name is Stephanie Ann McRae, but her nickname Sam comes from her initials.
Gotcha. All right. And she's loosely based on your experience. Is that, I mean,
Well, not
suspect
really,
you as
because
the
I've never
okay.
had I didn't have a background in public defense. I always just admired public defenders for the work they did. Um,
Okay.
and and just I just wanted to I did have some I had experience for 3 years as a solo practitioner. Um, I shared office space with several other attorneys, so I always felt like I was part of a kind of a collective of people. But it was my own practice, and I did that for 3 years. And while I was doing it, I started doing freelance writing and research. And the more writing I did, the more I realized I wanted to do that instead of practicing law. So I ended up closing the office. I started working for local publications, basically.
Mm.
And then at some point I started working at one of the Dow Jones news wires, a small subset of Dow Jones called federal filings. And I had this kind of dream job, really. I was working as a reporter part-time covering. One of the things I covered was the Supreme Court. So
Ooh.
I went to the Supreme Court almost every time I went into work, I would be going to the Supreme Court during their sessions. And I was just like blown away to be able to sit there in the press section watching what was going on and taking notes. And then I would go to
About movies, man.
yeah, it was just amazing. And I always felt very privileged to be able to do that. And then I would go to the press room and I would call the editor back at the office, and I would give her the headline that we would run, because we wanted to get that headline out right away before anybody, including Dow Jones, which was very strange. It was one of these strange situations where, see, they used to be an independent newswire, and then they were acquired by Dow Jones. So they were always feeling a kind of a competitive thing with with their own parent company.
Oh, wow.
So it was odd, but yeah, we wanted to be first with that headline. So I had to go to the newsroom, immediately get on the phone and get that headline in there.
Mm,
So yeah, because the stories were sort of, we had a lot of backstory that we could pre-prepare, for whatever decision they made.
sure.
And, and then then insert whatever needed to be inserted up front, as far as a few paragraphs on what it was, what the decision was, what effect it might have on industry, blah, blah, blah. Anything more timely would go right up at the top,
Right.
is what it comes down to.
Got it.
So, yeah, it was a very interesting environment to work in.
It sounds
I really had this,
fascinating.
I got a real sense at the time of what it was like to have that desire to get the news out first, it really brought home that sense of what it's like to work in a newsroom.
Mm,
So
wow. And so
yeah,
you have that opportunity because you're in Virginia?
I'm in Maryland.
You're in Maryland. Okay.
I was working, yeah, the Newswire was located in DC, so I would commute in, take
That's
the train. Yep. I used to take the train into DC.
awesome.
Yes.
And so I feel like I must have remembered it wrong, Debbie, but I thought that you started writing after well, you stopped writing. You started writing while you were an attorney.
That's right.
But
I started while I was an attorney, but then, really got into it more deeply after I closed the office.
okay. All right. And so one of the things that you wanted to talk about was you had said sustainability for writers, but also digital minimalism, which is that's a it seems like a really it's it's not something that people talk about a lot. And I think that,
Mm.
something that you've done a lot of thinking about because there's so much to it, you said.
Well, there is I- there, I guess there is some public discussion of this, because Cal Newport has a book called Minimalism, and he's fairly prominent, I think, in terms of um, the discussion on this topic.
Okay.
I know that he has a new book out, I think, on something about it all comes down to the same kinds of things, focusing on what it is you want,
Right.
um, not allowing yourself to be distracted by things that, I don't know,
Shiny objects.
shiny objects, exactly. That's what
Bigger
it
and
comes
better
down to.
and get it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it sometimes is false promises too. It's like, or over exaggerated claims so often. I mean, I see so much in my inbox now, my email inbox, that just delete, 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 delete.
Yeah.
It's like, it's gotten to the point where I delete almost, I would say more than half of my emails without reading them.
I
That's how bad it is.
I think I would agree with that. Close to half.
Because, after a while, it's like, I don't want to hear another sales pitch. Bye,
Right.
bye.
Right. I mean, at first when you get that, you're like, "Ooh, wow, they want to do business with me." And then you're like, "Yeah, it's just a
Mm-mm.
mass email. They don't
No,
really
no,
know or
no.
care."
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's really kind of sad. That's why, eventually it's going to eventually come down to people having to connect with one another in whatever way they can, in ways that are more personal, you know. Like if you have say a client list or a customer list, you could bother to find out what their birthday is and just send them a card or an email saying, "Hey, happy birthday.
Right.
Thinking about you and
Yeah.
hope
Have a
it's a
great
good
day.
one."
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, those big businesses are not doing that. I mean, I know you get
Right. Well, this is the benefit of having a more personal service, you
right.
know.
Well, and that's what you were just telling me about this book that you just are starting to read
Oh my gosh, yeah.
that is
Yeah.
a game changer
Thank
for
you for the reminder. Yes.
authors selling direct.
Authors, yes, Authors Selling Direct by Morgana Best. You're the best, Morgana Best. I'm loving this book so far. I just started it, so and I got a gazillion books to read, so believe me, I'm making time for this one.
But you've gotten some really good uh tips and ideas and points from that already, you said.
Already, yeah, I just gotten into it, and the point that she makes that when you buy a book from Amazon, when your reader, I'm speaking to authors now, when your reader buys a book from Amazon, you are not picking up a customer. That's what it comes down to. What you want are customers as well as readers, people who will come to you because they want to read your work. So, so the point is that once Amazon gets that your customer, because you sold to that retailer, that's on their list. They're not going to share it with you, and that's a lost opportunity. That's a lost opportunity to get to know that customer, get to know their reading habits, their buying habits,
Right.
and you have more control over the process in general by selling direct. And this is a great book to read to get to know how to do that sort of thing, I think. I mean, I have not looked ahead, but I sense that there's good stuff coming. So that's why I'm so, I mean, she just starts right out of the gate saying stuff that is already making more sense to me. And so I highly recommend it. What it requires, but I sense is coming. It's basically a mindset shift. You have to stop thinking of yourself as just an author and start thinking of yourself as an online entrepreneur
Hmm.
doing e-commerce.
Right.
There's a reason why it says e-commerce for authors at the top, because that's what it's about.
Right.
It
Well,
is all about that.
I think mindset is so involved in the mindset is a big issue. It's a big step for a lot of things.
Yes.
It's just we have to change the way that we're thinking about stuff. But that's so true what you're saying about, Amazon and not gaining a customer. But like when you're starting, if somebody were to say, to a podcaster, like, who is your audience? Right? And you're like, these people are interested in the same thing that I am, and they're mostly, such and such age or in which country or whatever. But like, if you're selling through Amazon, who is your audience, Debbie? You
That's the
have no
thing. You
idea.
don't know.
You don't know how to approach them. You don't know how to offer something that they're looking for. You don't know, what they're looking for,
hmm
anything about them.
You're also placing your trust in Amazon to do some kind of something for you that they won't do. They simply don't care. And if you were with a publisher now, that's not necessarily better, because, well, people who have actually been with big six publishers know the score on that one. Um, it's it's much more difficult to get your book promoted when you're competing with celebrities, big names.
Right.
They don't have the budget for it, or they don't, whatever.
Right.
I won't go off on
You
a,
gotta sell yourself really big to get a publisher if
yeah.
you're not a big name.
Now, the interesting thing is that I recently was with somebody who was with the Authors Guild. This actually the CEO of the Authors Guild, I believe she is, had been talking about sustainability and copyright. And when she started talking those words, my ears perked up. And she said that copyright provides a sustainable environment that allows authors to have a sustainable career, something like that. And that's not a direct quote because I was scribbling notes so fast. Um, it was intended to help authors to sustain themselves and their work. I
Mm,
thought that was a great point. Um, she also made the point that it often takes several years for someone to write a book. And I thought right away about all those indie authors out there, some of whom are trying to write like 3 or 4 books a year to keep up with Amazon's so-called cliff, the thing that happened, to keep their names out there,
right.
etc. And I think
They're
of
gonna
themselves
burn
wearing
out.
themselves out doing this stuff. And this woman from the Authors Guild just nailed it. I mean, she said, it takes time to write a book. That's the point. To write a good book takes time.
Right. I mean, you can
And
write a book, but it might not be quality.
exactly. And then she said, she made the point that copyright is a constitutional right. It is in the Constitution, and it was intended to take authors away from the patronage system. Now, that is really interesting when you think about it. Um, authors originally were people who got paid by very wealthy individuals, patrons. Copyright was intended to make us self-sufficient. It obviously hasn't.
Right.
Now we are setting up Patreons so we can get patrons. Is there not an irony in all this?
Right. Oh my goodness.
Are we going backwards or forwards? I'm never quite sure.
Well, depends
Anyway,
depends on who you follow, right? If
yeah.
people that are like, this is just the way that it's done. And
Yeah, right. It's fascinating. Yeah.
then people
So
that
you
don't
do
want
have
to
to
do
think outside the box of the normal author path.
right.
I mean, that's how it's very difficult to know how to advise somebody to become an author these days. Because in the old days, it was look for an agent, send out query letters until you feel like you're going to drop dead getting, from all these rejections. Um, and or go with a small press, one that will accept. In the old days, the publishers would take unsolicited. I mean, we're talking the old days, way back when. But when I was coming up through this whole system, whatever, when I decided to try to write a novel, the standard advice was do not self-publish. That'll kill your career.
That's
Oh, wow. That's
That's not
dire.
exciting at all. Yeah.
That's dire. So, when people started to do it, you know, um, actually what it was that got me started was a an anthology that I was I had a short story published in through Sisters in Crime. Sisters in Crime Chesapeake chapter created this first anthology. Um, anyway, it was when it first came out, it came out through a press that ultimately went under.
Mm,
And it was the same press that released my first book, because this is actually not exactly a first edition. Um, I've been through a few covers too. So anyhow, so when that company went under and the anthology went out of print, they decided to self-publish it, basically through lulu.com, I think. And so I used lulu.com to bring my book back.
right.
Ultimately, I decided that I'd just give it a try and see what happened. And right around then is when I'd learned about ebooks. And I didn't know anything about ebooks before that.
Okay.
So it's like,
I
well,
don't know a lot.
yeah, I thought, well, if it's so easy and so forth, why not give it a try, Maybe I'll make a few extra bucks. That's all I was expecting, a few extra bucks. Instead, because I kept my prices low, I was selling my books for 99 cents. Um, while everybody else was trying to get $2.99, the 70% royalty. I tried that. My sales dropped to the point where I was still making money, but I was making substantially less than I would if by volume, if I sold them for 99 cents.
Right.
So it seemed to make sense to me at the time to sell them for 99 cents,
Right.
despite the fact that people were saying, oh, don't undervalue your work, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, yeah, but
Such a balance to get it in front of all the eyes or to make the money, you know?
yeah, it's funny. It's both, and yet, well, I'll get to that in a second. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so I was really alarmed at how good my sales were at first. And then they just seemed to skyrocket at one point. I guess it was like in late 2010 to early 2011 that ebooks just boomed, took off. And I remember at that time, me and Karen Cantwell, we both had our books featured on some sort of thing on Barnes and Noble. Our book covers were there with a description of the books.
Um,
And I was like, hey,
Look at us.
yeah, look at us. Exactly. I remember she told me about it and I was like, oh wow, that's awesome. So I think that had to help with the Nook sales then, because it might have been that alone right there, along with the Amazon sales, of course, that nudged my book to the New York Times bestseller level. I was just like
Definitely.
shocked, truly shocked.
Um,
I mean, to me, it was like mind-numbing shock.
right.
And I was
My
like,
little story.
this can't be happening. This must be a joke. I remember I found out because an agent wrote to me. I guess the list comes out to the agents before the Sunday that they're published. And this agent wrote to me and said, congratulations on making the New York Times bestseller list. I was, would you consider sending me a
Can
copy
I
of your
be your
book?
agent?
Yeah, I'd like to take a look at your book and please send me a copy, if you will, So I was just, what? this must be no way. And then there was another one from an editor saying virtually the same thing.
Wow.
And I was just like, no way.
So this is
So,
from self-publishing.
right, yeah. Yeah, I remember shortly before this happened, it was toward the end of the previous year, I had heard that the New York Times was considering adding self-published authors to their list. And I brought this up with somebody who we had a little promotional group that I was a part of. We were just, like helping each other out with online stuff in terms of promoting each other's work. Um, but I remember bringing this up with somebody in that group who said, "Oh, they'll never do that. They're not going to do that." I'm like, "Well, maybe, or maybe not. I don't know. I
Right.
don't know what's on their mind."
Right. Right. But at the
Oh,
same,
but he was convinced that,
why would you quit before even starting? Because someone said that?
yeah, I mean, and it's funny because it's like, his attitude was almost like, "Oh,
Don't even bother.
those squares will never accept us," so to speak.
Don't even bother. You're too
Yeah,
small. No one knows you.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't,
But so 99-cent downloads got you the New York Times bestseller.
yeah, pretty much that and good reviews. I mean, it's not like I had nothing but 2-star and 1-star reviews or
Right.
anything. But, there were enough 3-star reviews and 4 and 5-star reviews to where people could feel comfortable with whatever, I guess.
Awesome.
Yeah, because another thing I did is I sought out reviewers. I remember when I started out, I was looking through the list. There was a list. There used to be a list serve, which is an improper thing to say, of course, because list serve is a specific thing. But nonetheless, on this list were people who reviewed mysteries, and they would often post their reviews on the list. And so I would get their email, send them a polite letter, email, asking, would introducing myself, telling them who I was, what I'd written, would they consider reviewing my book? And most of the time they said yes.
That's
So I got a lot of good reviews out of that.
that's so great.
So I mean, it's like in the beginning that I just took the obvious first steps, I thought, finding people who like mysteries and connecting with them.
Right. But I think that, I mean, like you were saying before about the personalization of sales and customership and stuff like that, like the fact that you've reached out personally to these people and said, would you review my book, that
Mhm.
I'm sure that that held a lot of weight for them. I'm sure they're like, well, who are you? But at the same time, like, this person asked me to do this and I said yes, so I'll read the book. And then they're like, this is a really great book. So I
Yeah,
mean,
I wanted.
how many people, I wonder, don't know to do something like that?
That's an odd. I, I, I'm, I'm not. I always think authors would do that. I don't know.
But I think that, I mean, I don't
Maybe
know.
maybe I'm just assuming too much
I don't know.
because yeah, I one of the things I noticed about I don't know, crime writers. I don't know if this is a thing that women do or if it's men also. At first, there seemed to be this disinclination toward asking your readers to leave a review. And I thought, why? Why? I mean, why wouldn't you invite them to please tell the world about your experience with the book?
Right.
Yeah, I
I
don't
think
know.
you're right. I think you're right about that. And I don't know, again, I don't know, like you, I'm not sure if it's a male thing as well, or if it's mostly women, or if it's I'm not sure what the answer is to that, but I think that you are special because you don't feel that, um like, who am I? Like, why would they want to read what I'm writing? But, like, you said, if you don't mind reading and rating this, or reviewing this book, I would love that. You just,
Yeah, I mean, it was just, a request
yeah.
like any other. So, yeah, but it's funny. One of the things you have to do when you start screenwriting, I found out, is really starting to network with people and letting them know you're there and what you can do for them, kind of. And that's a
Debbie is
process.
working on a screenplay now.
Oh, I've worked on several.
That's a
Well,
new thing.
it's amazing. If you had asked me, yeah, if you had asked me, say, back in 2011, if I would be writing screenplays in 10 years, I would have looked at you like, what? Are you out of your mind?
I'm a mystery writer.
Yeah, mystery writer. Yeah, okay, I did work on this one thing back in 2009, but I don't know that that's going to go anywhere because I don't live in LA.
Right.
Well, you don't have to live in LA anymore, but it depends. It depends. So it's always beneficial too, because then you're right in there with the crowd that does this stuff all the time. But the thing is, you're with everybody who's looking for a job too. So
Right.
anyway, it's
You-
like being in Washington, D.C. and being a lawyer or a lobbyist. Throw a rock, you hit a lawyer or a lobbyist
Right.
or a government worker. So anyway,
But you were
what was
talking
I
about
saying?
screenplays. You were talking about screenplays, and I
Screenplays,
interrupted.
yes. Screenplays and networking.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's important to be able to put yourself out there and to be able to make requests at some point. But you don't walk up to somebody and immediately go, "Hey, can you do me a favor?" I mean, that's not the way it works. Yeah.
Right. Oh,
Because these people
sure.
are super, super busy
Right.
and and they get lots and lots of requests and they have big money deals to think about
Right. You want to make a
and
connection.
selling these things. Yeah, you got to make a connection. And there's another webinar I was on recently talking about the importance of connections and maintaining your connections. And one of the things you can do is think about everybody you know in your life. Write down, friends and family. Um, then people outside of that circle, say your associates at work or something like that, or some club that you're in, anything. And then think about the people who you haven't contacted in a long, long time. Think about somebody you haven't spoken to, say, in a year or 5 years or 20 years, depending on how old you are.
Right.
Um, so, I mean, when you think about all the people in your life that are significant enough for you to remember, think about what it would be like to reach out to those people and just say, hey, I was thinking about you. I'm wondering how you're doing. It's been a long, long time, and I'm currently working as an author and a screenwriter, believe it or not.
Right.
Um, Anyhow, I just wanted to check in with you, see how you're doing, and in any case, have a nice day, or whatever you sign off with in a
Right.
letter,
Right.
in an email. Keep saying letter when I mean email. Somehow letter sounds nicer. I'll send you a letter. Well, then we call it a newsletter, so why not, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
But that's it. So that
There.
it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt at all. It took
It does not
very
hurt.
little time.
If
And
anything, it just
probably meant a lot to the person that you were sending
it
it.
will mean a lot to I mean, if somebody had wrote to me, who I knew in high school and said something like, "Hey, I was just thinking about you, wondering how you're doing," and blah blah blah. Whatever. That would be very touching, and I'd be very interested,
Right.
depending on what they had to say.
Right. Yeah. Connections are so important. I totally agree. Uh,
Mm.
but so speaking of connections, I wanted to also touch on the fact that you have not one but two podcasts as well. So
Yeah,
an attorney, and then you're a mystery writer, um and
technically a librarian as well.
plays, and what was the library thing?
Oh, I have a master's in library science.
Yeah,
That's kind of helped a little bit in terms of understanding some internet-y things.
sure, sure.
Because I had to learn information technology. This was in 2000 when I started library school. So a lot has changed since then, but you know,
Right.
it's all ones and zeros.
All right.
There, there, I said it.
Uh, That's that's such a great tip though. And I love so much, Debbie, that you're talking about just sort of taking a step back from the busyness of everything. And I love that so much about you, because I've told you this many times, but like your Instagram posts just make me stop for a second. So if you guys, if you don't mind, check out Debbi Mack on Instagram, and it's Debbie with just an I and then underscore, right? Debbie underscore Mack. Or am I
It's no, it's Debbi Mack, TOO.
okay? Debbi Mack 2. Sorry. Check out Debbi Mack 2 on Instagram, because she's posting like flowers and hills and just these beautiful things that life is so busy and we're always running, and then you see this post that's just like these beautiful, azalea, I think that you're like,
Azaleas most recently, yeah.
and you're just like, oh man, like I needed that, because there's just so much in the world, and there's just not enough of just enjoying the beauty. So I appreciate that a
Exactly.
lot, but I think also it like trickles into everything that you do, honestly. And I don't know if that's like the stroke where you had that, like that brush with death, or whatever, that you're just like, I need to enjoy what I'm doing. But
Hmm.
saying that as an author, you want to connect with your customers. You want to have customers, not just throw stuff into the world and hope that you make money off of it. It's not all about money.
Hmm.
I mean,
It's not
money
entirely
money's
about,
great, obviously, but
right,
knowing who is reading what you're writing means so.
right. Does mean something. It's it's like when you go to a bookstore to do a signing or any kind of signing in person, it's always different. I mean, it's so different just to connect with another person. I used to when I first published my first book, I would go to a Barnes and Noble, arrange a signing, or another bookstore. Like there's one called Readings and Greetings
I love
in
that.
up near Baltimore. Yeah, it's in Baltimore, I think, or near Baltimore, something like that. Anyway, yeah, Greetings and Readings, something along those lines. But I would just sit there and I would hold up my book and say,
This is me.
hey, do you like mysteries? And people would either say, nah, and I'd be like, okay, that's cool. Or they'd go, yeah. And then we would just engage in a little conversation.
Yeah,
And, all I would have to do is say, hi, do you like mysteries? I mean, it was just the most natural thing
right.
to say. And
What a great energy that must be.
it is a good energy, actually. It's much better than sitting there. Some, authors complain, gosh, there I was sitting there just, waiting for someone to care about my book. Oh,
Ah,
don't be like that. That that's like showing no enthusiasm whatsoever for what you're doing.
right,
Why should they care about this person just sitting there when you can be actively saying, hi, how
right. And whether
are
or not
you? Do you like
they
mysteries?
Right.
How's your day going? Do you
If you
like
don't like
mystery?
mysteries, maybe this person sitting here scowling has something that you would enjoy
Yeah.
because
That's what I
they're
should
not getting
do.
anyone talking to them. I wonder why.
I should stand by intimidated authors and be a barker for them, or whatever you call it, a carny. I don't know what they're called. Uh, say, hey, do you like mysteries? Check
Yeah,
this out.
right. Motion.
I
Yeah.
am loving this. I just started it. I
Yeah.
don't know. I seem to have a natural tendency to do stuff like that.
I think that's I think that's what's so great about you though. I mean, that's honestly, I mean, I think that, there's such a detachment in life these days.
hmm
And,
yeah,
and
yeah,
writing is a pretty quiet, quiet thing to do.
it
But
is.
so then reaching out and finding people and like getting to know who they are and again, like the whole audience mentioned um that I had talked about a little bit, but like if if and you're a book consumer as well. You read lots of books. And
Oh
so
yeah.
were to go to a book signing and someone else was there for a book signing and you know about the type of book that they're doing or whatever, you can say, if you don't like what I'm reading, how about these people?
Mm-hmm.
It literally takes no effort and it means something to people, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There are probably some people that are like, please don't talk to me. I just want to get my book signed. But at the same time, a lot of people would be like, oh, this author really cares. This author loves what they're doing. They're not burned out, like you were saying. I think that there's so that personal touch is just it's so meaningful and people remember that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I certainly remember when somebody sends me a card after being on my podcast, which one author did.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
I was so touched that I will never forget it. It was S.G. Wong. Thank you, S.G. Oh,
Thank you,
it was
SG. That's
it
so
was so
nice.
sweet. I was really touched by that. And people will often email me back, and I'm very grateful for all of that.
Yeah,
Um, so I feel like there have been a lot of people through podcasting that I've gotten to know who are just wonderful and just great examples of good authors who take their craft seriously, who were willing to share knowledge with others, their
right.
advice, their experiences. So, yeah, I mean, it's been a great experience. And I'm going to be starting a 10th season in July, I guess, this coming July. And the other podcast is a monthly thing I do with an author in England who, as it happens, is also a Doctor Who fan. And I'm a huge Doctor Who fan.
Oh.
Um,
Well,
so
why don't you
I
tell us
kind of
about
can,
these podcasts, Debbie?
yeah, that podcast is called Dark and Twisted Alleys, a film noir podcast. And
And that's the one that's once a month.
that's once a month. I think we most recently discussed The Killers in the
Oh,
one that came out.
I listened to that one.
Ah, yes, yeah, yeah. That is a very interesting remake, I gotta say.
Yeah.
Very existential compared with the original, which seemed to be very mostly about money and double crosses. But yeah, same pretty much, kind of set up and plot with. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's interesting to compare modern noir with the old noir and how much harder edged it is, even in the 60s. I mean, things were just toughening up in cinema. The Hays Code was gone. You know what the Hays Code is?
Don't.
See, a lot of people don't know what the Hays Code is. Back in the day, somebody set up this thing called the Hays Code, where you couldn't have nudity, all sorts of subjects were risque, like homosexuality, too risque. divorce, 𝗙𝗿ance, sleeping in the same bed, unheard of with among married people, always separate beds,
The Hays Code is
weird.
like censorship? Is that?
There were essentially censorship boards, I think, at the time.
But that's not connected to the Hays Code?
I don't know enough about the history to give you a good answer to that one. I just know that there were in this state, I remember there were boards that would review movies for suitability. And then of course the rating system came along, but that wouldn't come until I think the late 60s, I think.
Hmm.
I'm trying to remember when they started rating movies, because it was during my childhood. So it was sometime in the 60s. But anyway, we discussed film noir, and it's great. We started off with Double Indemnity, which is a real classic and a real standard. Then we did Out of the Past, which is just a fabulous movie.
Hmm.
And then most recently, I think it was The Killers. And I think we're following up with In a Lonely Place. That'll be coming later this month.
Now, do you really enjoy having a co-host?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm sure that that's really fun. So you get to know this person better, but also you can discuss, angles that you want to talk about, and
Yeah.
um
Yeah, I mean it's nice to have somebody there to actually have a conversation with, rather than me asking a lot of questions. And I love what people have to say. I love when people talk. Keep talking. I want them to say, keep talking.
right?
Um, of course, there's always a point where you want to come in with another question, though. But that's the part that I always have to work on. How much do I want people to talk? That's, do you find that's to be the case?
Sometimes, yes. I mean, there are a couple people that I've had to like really sort of pull information out of, like, keep
Yeah, that's the
going,
hard
keep
one.
going.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
generally, I kind of give people a heads up, like, this is not about me. This is about highlighting what you're doing. And so I want
Right.
to talk.
I think sometimes people are afraid to talk about that because they don't want to come off about boasting or something.
Mhm.
But I'm simply stating facts here, folks.
Right.
I'm not trying to, tell you I'm the best writer in the world or anything.
But you really care, and that's
I
different.
care. I
Uh,
care.
yeah.
I care
So
so much it hurts.
what's your podcast again that is 10 years old? It's in the 10th season.
Yeah, that one's the Crime Cafe.
Crime Cafe, that's what it's called. Okay. And this is you talking about
This would be me
exploring?
interviewing other crime, suspense, and thriller writers.
That's exciting.
And I have had all sorts of people on the show that I never would have expected. Uh, I'm just amazed some of the people who come on the show. Satha Rothschild, who is was one of the writers for what's it called? Glow, the show Glow, I think it is, with about the lady wrestlers.
Okay.
Oh, great show. Just a fabulous show. And I
Oh,
was just
wow.
like thrilled to have her on, just to pick her brain a little bit about TV and all that. Um, and then the other, let's see, oh gosh, so many great writers. I mean,
Over 10
uh,
seasons, I'm sure.
yeah, Robert Crace was on. Why am I blanking on his name? Joe Lansdale. Uh, these are people who carry some weight in the industry. So I was just like, wow, I feel privileged to have this conversation. And then so many people who are just in different stages as far as where they are in publishing. Some people are traditionally published and have always wanted that, and that's what they have and that's what they like. And this is what they do. And then I have indie authors who, some of whom have set up their own publishing companies,
Wow. It must be so
which basically I
fascinating.
have.
Yeah. That must be so
So,
fascinating just to talk to different people in the same field that you are and to
mhm.
get to hear how everyone is doing it and see how differently people do it. And I'm sure you're just like, is that better? Like,
Well, I just, I don't assign better or worse. I just think things work, certain things work for
sure,
people,
sure.
and people will feel comfortable working the way they feel comfortable working.
Right.
And nobody has to be on TikTok. That's my, kind of my attitude. It's like, you don't have to do any of the things people out there telling you you have to do. You have to decide which of those things you want to do and connect with readers that way. Because, I mean, if I were writing young adult, more young adult, I should say, um, then maybe I might consider, really trying TikTok, because I know that younger, it skews younger demographically. It just makes sense.
Right.
But as long as I have a readership among adults, I figure I'm okay with occasionally be on Facebook. She rolls her eyes. I just so despise Facebook. Don't get me started. Um, so anyway, between Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and podcasts and
Yeah,
whatever else I'm doing, I always
you're
hope
spread
for the
pretty thin.
best.
You're spread a little bit thin, but I mean, it sounds like you have a great way to keep yourself in balance.
I
Uh,
try.
yeah,
Yeah.
with the I think it's great also that you're as an author, like I was saying, it can be very quiet, but then, also hosting two podcasts where you're talking to people, like there's a big social aspect to that. And it sort of balances out the quiet time for writing.
Yeah. And I just I set aside that time every day. I mean, it's like, even if it's just like a few hundred words, or even 100 words, or even 10 words.
Put
I
something on
mean,
paper.
it's like, I don't go by word count. I go by, quality of time, time. If I can put in 2 good hours, then I feel pretty good. And usually in that time I can manage. If I get 500 words down, I feel pretty good, actually, to be honest. These days I tend to be something of a slow writer, but a persistent one. So
Mm,
it's like every day I do a little bit of it, and
right. Well, and again,
it's going to accumulate.
that's the beauty of self-publishing, though, that you don't
That's
have
right.
anyone pressuring you to say you need to put something out here in such and such amount of time.
That's it. That's You're in control of all of it, which is, a great responsibility, as well as a great feeling of freedom, you
Mm,
know. But again, you're responsible for your marketing, you're responsible for the cost of the cover, which are not inconsiderable and worth the price, believe me. You're responsible for formatting, you're responsible for promotion, marketing,
right.
getting the
Uh,
word out.
Now,
Yeah.
do you have like a set list or something like a checklist for writing? You must have it in your head after so many books, though.
Oh, you mean like, as far as like checklist
Like if
for,
someone were to start writing and was thinking about self-publishing, is there a list somewhere or is there a list that you go by?
in terms of what you need to do to prepare to self-publish? Yeah, I have made that list, actually. In fact, I think basically it's going to end up being a lead magnet for people who might want to learn more about
Hmm,
self-publishing.
cool.
And because, really, I think there's a dearth of information about what copyright is and why it's so important, and why it's important to maintain control over it, because really it's your only asset.
Right.
This is your asset. And when the woman from the Authors Guild made that statement about how authors' copyright is something enshrined in the Constitution in order to make them able to sustain a livelihood,
Mm.
that really just hit home. It's like, this is yours, manage it like you would any other piece of property that you own.
Right. Right. And if you're putting that in a store or on that place, that
Well,
Amazon place,
yeah.
like you're giving up your any ownership, right? You're just
Well,
producing.
you're not giving up ownership, but you are giving up a customer, somebody who potentially could be interested in other books you've written. I mean, you can just suggest other books that you've written after they buy that book, things that are more personally tailored toward that person. Um, each individual. I mean, not everybody is going to want to buy another book, but that's okay too. I mean, but just the fact that you've made a contact, and maybe they'll remember you for the fact that you remembered them.
Right. Right.
Um, and the other thing is, this, when you publish through Amazon, yeah, okay, they're not your publisher, they're your distributor.
Mm.
Because when you get your book put in the system, they'll ask the publisher name. And that some people say their own names, and some people will have a company that they set up a trade name, as I did.
Okay.
And so I don't know. I guess my point is that you don't have to be on Amazon. It's a choice.
Right.
It's a choice. It's always a choice. And I'll probably put my books back up there. That's fine. I don't mind having my books up there. They can be my free showroom, to kind of pull a reversal on them. They were
Right.
using retailers as their free showrooms. So now this retailer will use them as my free showroom,
Right.
so to speak. I mean, I wasn't making all that much money from them before I took my books down. Um, but I'm sort of sputtering to a halt here, I feel.
Oh, okay.
But having your books up on Amazon is not the end of the world, but it's not necessarily going to be the most wonderful thing either. You just have to find ways to get your work out there. And other than that, I think you have to
Gotcha.
think outside of the retailer box, so to speak.
Right.
Think of yourself as a person who's on a virtual corner selling books, so to speak. Out there, there's so much stuff going on, but you've got this fantastic book to, show the world, and, you know,
Right.
and then there are all the ways that you can spread the word without paying for ads, like as I did with these reviewers. I mean, people who they don't even get paid for it. They just blog
Mm-hmm.
reviews because they love books. I do videos now of book reviews because I love books so much.
Mm.
That's all free. It's all out there for free on YouTube and on my blogs.
Yeah. That's
So,
very cool.
it's just what readers do. Readers read and then they tell other people. And the
Right.
internet, you know.
And writers love you. Because,
Of course, yeah, of course. Yes.
yeah,
Because we were readers once and, and we know,
right.
and we really appreciate,
Sure.
we appreciate all the good words that you
Right.
can send out there, all the good thought.
Feedback is always good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, so let's see. Debbie, this has been amazing. I know it's the second time we've talked about this, and so I had a little bit better of an idea going in, but it's I love that it just can go so many different places. But so when I say the word sustainability to you, what does that mean?
Well, to me, it means being able to do your job in a sustainable way and have a life that you feel is the life that you want, and have feel connection with where you are, feel connected with your work, um, and not feel like, oh, I missed the opportunity, I can't do
Mm,
this thing. um, I think a lot of people stop themselves from doing things out of fear of rejection, of failure, of ridicule. And sometimes it helps to stop and think about why it is that you feel that way. What is it about, what's stopping you from writing that novel or that memoir
right,
or whatever?
right,
Think about it and realize that it's just a blockage created by your own mind.
right,
That once you start to really examine what it is that's stopping you, it's like a nightmare. It's not real.
right.
When you have a nightmare, it feels real until you realize it's a dream.
Yeah,
When something is stopping you because of, you fill in the blank, then you realize, oh, that there was nothing to be afraid of. I wasn't going to die if that happened.
right. Well, I mean,
And
Mel Robbins always says, one of my favorite things that she says is, all these things that we're so afraid of. What if it went super well?
mhm,
What if what you're afraid of could be even better than you could imagine?
that's a great
And
way of
it's just
thinking
waiting
of it.
for you to take that step.
Exactly. You won't know if you don't try.
Mm. Right, exactly. But we're
So
so afraid that we don't take that step. We don't do it.
that's why, it's important, I think, to really, if you want to be a writer, to focus on that quality part, quality in your writing, as well as quality in your life.
Right. Right. Make sure to have that balance. And in doing that, I'm gonna say again, check out Debbi Mack 2 TOO on Instagram
Maybe
for that
I should
balance.
make maybe I should make relaxation videos. Just
I would not
nothing
hate
but,
that.
wow, I could set up a whole new YouTube channel.
I would not hate that. But so Debbie, how can people find you to learn more about your books, your and what you're doing, your screenplays, your podcasts, your your relaxation videos?
My potential relaxation videos.
Okay.
Let's see. Well, I'm on YouTube under Debbi Mack, Debbi Mack, like the truck. Let's see, no relation that I know of anyway. That would be interesting. Let's see what else. I'm on Twitter at Debbi Mack. I'm on Instagram at Debbi Mack 2 TOO. I'm on Facebook at Debbi Mack Writer. I'm hardly ever doing anything. Well, I'm doing stuff there, I guess. I post all the things that I post to various blogs. I seem to have, let's see, how many blogs at this point? Do I have 5 blogs again? I might. There's a website I've been kind of working on and off on. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. I don't know whether to keep it going, shut it down, or what. I call it Wayward Lawyer because I'm a lawyer who turned into a writer and novelist and
Sweet.
screenwriter and librarian.
Yeah.
So put that in your pipe and smoke it, as they used to say. As they used to say.
Feed him and
Um,
weep. All those things. I can't even believe all these things that you're doing. So 2 podcasts, you've got all these books, you've got all these blogs, and a screenplays. Like
I am clearly a glutton for punishment.
you are just a creative to the core. I
I
mean, really.
suppose. I guess. I think I'm a little bit wilder than I come across. There's a wild spirit in me somewhere.
I
Because
think that's so great.
it's interesting because I tend to be sort of attracted to wild personalities. Is it an accident that I found Keith Moon fascinating? The man who, with the who was just crazy. They used to call him Moon the Loon. Um, is it an accident that my favorite Beatle was John Lennon, the most sarcastic of the Beatles and the most outspoken politically?
Right.
Is it an accident that I find Hunter S. Thompson to be such a fascinating person and that I love his writing?
Hmm.
Hmm, I don't know. There's a wild spirit in me that is repressed by the white lawyer that I am.
I love it. I love it. I mean, I think that all of those things just make you so compelling, and
I'm something, I guess. I
they
don't
must
know. I'm a human being.
it must all spill into everything. It spills into everything that you do, and I think that's super fun.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I'd hate to
Well,
think I'm a bore.
oh gosh, I can't imagine. I can't imagine. But anyway, well, thank you so much again for sharing all this information. This is it's a different turn, but I think that it's also really important. There are so many authors out there, and I think that there are things that people just get stuck on, and there are so
Mm.
many ways to um I get past or get through I don't know, the doldrums of if you get stuck on something, if you're in a rut, or if you are just burned out because you've got a publisher and you're just churning out products and you don't really care about it. But I would say, what I'm getting from you, it seems like you need a lot of diversity in what you're doing. You need to balance it out.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, that's something I'm always striving for. It's like, okay, I don't want to go too far and do too much. And you have to know how to say no. That's one of the things.
It's a tough
Yeah,
one.
I've had to say no to, certain books that have been, given to me. It's like, okay, I've read the first chapter and really I can tell this is not going the way I want, this is not
Right.
the kind of thing I normally read or something. And I have to be on the lookout for that kind of thing all the time. I can't over commit at this point because you have to allow time for yourself. You have to allow time to recover.
Right. Whew. Wow.
Yeah,
That's good stuff, though. I mean, it's all good
yeah.
stuff. It's so educational and I think so important. I actually have a children's book that I've been working on for in my head. I've been working on it
Mm-hmm.
in my head for about almost 20 years.
Hmm.
I have not put it out yet.
Oh,
So,
see what's stopping you.
time right now.
Have you thought of just setting aside half an hour or 15 minutes to write a little bit?
I had put it down on paper, and then every time I looked at it, I was like, this is too long, or this is not long enough. And then I would add to it, and then I was like, this isn't really what I wanted. And so I have to like scrap it and start fresh.
Maybe you should start a writing journal just to get in the habit of writing.
Yeah, I think you're,
That's one of the things I recently suggested to someone.
yeah, just
I
right.
know it helped me find my voice as a writer.
Hmm, that's a good tip. All right, I'll give that a shot.
You should,
Okay.
or join a writing group. They'll keep you accountable.
Oops, wow. Um, I will definitely consider that. Cool. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Oops.